Aloha, and welcome to the 2022 Maui candidate interviews that we've been doing now for a little over a month, and we are winding down now. Today we have Mahina Poepoe, who's running for State Representative District number 13, which includes Haiku, Hana, Molokai, and Lanai. Welcome, Mahina. Nice to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
Mahina, just to let, first of all, our viewers know your background and your civic engagement, could you just give us an overview and why you feel that qualifies you to run for this important office as state rep?
Okay, sure. My name is Mahina Poepoe. I am born and raised on Molokai. I have a bachelor's degree in public administration from the University of Hawaii. Professionally, I have a background in small business. I owned and operated a surf shop in Kaunakakai, Molokai, with a friend for 5 years. And following that, in that experience, I learned how to operate every aspect of a business, from the day-to-day operations to the taxes and customer service. And that was an incredible experience. But after that, I was pulled more toward my work in nonprofit. I got a job at Āina of Maui, which is an environmental cultural justice nonprofit on Molokai. And we do ahupua'a restoration in Keawanui. And following that, I got a job at the Molokai Maui Invasive Species Committee. So if you're familiar with the Maui Invasive Species Committee, we do very similar work, but on Molokai, and we are a branch of MISC. And I also work for Councilmember Keani Rollins-Fernandez as a legislative analyst in her office on Molokai. And through that experience, I've been able to learn about the legislative process on the county end from behind the scenes, and really get to know what it's like to have to draft and craft and propose and pass legislation, and to experience and understand the very real impacts of measures that are passed has been an incredible experience. I've also worked on 2 budgets since I've been there: fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. And we just wrapped up fiscal year 23 budget at just over $1 billion. So that's historical. That's me professionally. Civic engagement wise, I founded a nonprofit, Kupeke Ahupua'a, which this photo behind me is of Kupeke Ahupua'a, and we are right now doing fish pond restoration and planning for an Ahupua'a restoration from Mauka to Makai. I actively participate in testifying and meetings, ranging from boards and commissions, specifically Molokai Planning Commission. I am probably the most well-attended community person at those meetings. Sometimes I'm the only person there, so it's really important for me to at least have representation from the community in these meetings. At the county council, I testify. I testify at the Seaworm. I've, interfaced with the Navy when they wanted to come and train in our nearshore waters. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'll stop there, and if you want me to expand, I can.
Well, I just want a follow-up question. How long have you been working for Keani Rollins? And out of all these activities, what is the thing that you're most passionate about and that you would like to bring into our state legislature then as part of, if you get elected?
I've worked for Councilmember Rollins-Fernandez for about 1 year and 4 months and 2 weeks maybe. And what I'm most passionate about is my Āina work. It's the work that just breathes life into my soul. And so I think, and also, the cultural aspect of that. So I think that that's what I would like to bring, is to elevate our our cultural identity and practices into the state legislature and lawmaking processes.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll have Bruce Douglas.
Hi, Mahina. So I'm going to dovetail off that previous question, have you elaborate. If elected a state rep, what would be your 3 favorite projects? Because for me, a legislature doesn't sit there and vote on things. It's you're bringing laws together, proposing it, and participating, and not just sitting back. So what would be the 3 things that you would want to champion from beginning to end and bring to the state legislature if you got elected?
Well, on Molokai, I was the leader in banning short-term rentals. So we have 0 short-term rentals. I think something that I like to focus on in regard to affordable housing would be addressing speculation. So I do have a couple of ideas of how I'd like to do that. And, I'm sure there are many more ideas, but one thing that I was thinking was looking at conveyance tax and possibly increasing conveyance tax for sales over, $5 million, say. So I think, addressing affordable housing is a multi-pronged approach. And I think working from that anti-speculation aspect is one way that I would like to help address that. Okay, 3, water. We on Molokai, we have recently restored full flow to Kavela Stream. It's for 180 days, and we come back and go back to the seaworm. But I think water is an everybody issue. Climate change is happening, drought is happening. And so if we're gonna preserve our islands for future generations, water is a basic necessity. So an idea that I have is I'd like to revisit the sustainable yield calculation and incorporate climate change projections, drought data, rainfall data, and traditional customary needs at the shoreline into a more holistic sustainable yield. Oh, that was only 2. 3, quality of life, cost of living. I know that the minimum wage was what happened at the legislature this past session was progress, but it's not where we need to be. I would like to keep working on getting the minimum wage to a basic living wage at least.
Thank you. And on that, the county is a very friendly place to work, but the state's a snake pit. How would you navigate? You'd be a new person on the block. Progressives are often cast aside and their bills aren't brought forward. How would you navigate the snake pit of the state if you were elected?
Well, I've never been in a snake pit before, so I'm not sure. I would do my best, but I always fall back on who I am and what I'm here for. I do think that I'm an easy person to work with. I listen very well, and I try to hear all sides of a story. I do my research before taking a position on an issue. So I'm really open to collaboration, and I hope that would help me in the snake pit.
That's a difficult question. Thank you for your answer.
Thanks.
Okay, next we'll have Ann Picathley.
Aloha, Mahina. This is about the housing crisis that's really gotten out of hand. It's forcing people who are born and raised here to move elsewhere off the island, mainland. And so do you think is a solution at the state level to address, what is the solution to ensure that there's affordable housing for like generations to come?
I think there are a lot of ideas and possible solutions. I think that the state could assist with financing the purchase or providing for the purchase of lands that are appropriate for developing affordable housing. I think that the state could do more to provide housing for their own workers. I'm very aware of hypocrisy, and if we're gonna talk the talk, then we should walk the walk, and also look at how, as an employer, the state is also providing for their workers regarding housing and salaries. So yeah, those are a couple of ideas. I also think that continuing to address like the anti-speculation side will be really important as well.
Can you describe more about that, the anti-speculation? What you mean by that?
I like what I described earlier, looking at laws that would discourage investment, purchasing, and house flipping and commodification, like through increased taxation, increased fees for housing that is being flipped, within only a few years of being owned.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Great. Next, we'll have Alan Lloyd. Unmute, Alan.
Hello, Mahina. Okay, so I have two-part question. First part is, what, in your opinion, should the legal minimum wage be on Maui and in Hawaii?
Okay, that's the first part.
That's it.
Okay, so currently the minimum wage is $10.10, and in October it'll go up to $12 and incrementally up to $18 by 2028. So I think, I would love to say I think the minimum wage should be $20 tomorrow or in October, but I think realistically, I do like the graduated approach because it allows for businesses also to prepare for the changes. So if I had to say, if by October it should be $12 or more, I would say $14 to $16. But I do think that we need to get minimum wage to a living wage, so $26 to $30 by 2026.
Okay, thank you, mahalo. And my second part of this question is, if you're elected as a state rep, how would you, for example, speed up the current timeline, which is now 18 by 2028, so that it gets people closer to a livable wage faster?
Well, I think we just need to revisit what was passed this year and work from there. I would have to do more research on exactly how I would do that, and collaborate and get more information. But I do think that it needs to be increased more drastically than it has been at this current legislative session. I was disappointed with the $18 by 2028.
Okay, and what would you like to see in it?
I supported the $26 by 2026, I believe, and yeah. So I would also like to. I know it goes up every 2 years in the what was past, it goes up every 2 years, but I was thinking that every year I would prefer to see it go up. I think that it's even more of graduated because it's less over time. You know what I mean? I would like to see it go up $1 or $2 every year rather than $2 every 2 years.
And a really quick last question. Would you consider working with, in the legislature, there's something called the Working Families Coalition?
I haven't heard of the coalition. I'm happy to research them, and it sounds like something I would be interested in working with.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Mahina, I will ask the next question. And it has to do with our education system that we have here in Maui County. With it being Oahu-centric in terms of our school boards and the way they function, it seems like there's a lot of tax money that goes out to Oahu, but yet what we get back is somewhat less than maybe we should be expecting. What would you do about this issue, and how would you help resolve it in terms of the way our education system has been run as of late?
Well, I think that, you know, I like the idea of decentralized whatever we can. I like the idea of decentralized food systems and also decentralized government where it's appropriate. So I would support, you know, creating a board on Maui or for Maui County. And, you know, if other counties perhaps feel the same way, it could be a team effort to have that separated control. And yeah, I being from Molokai, we feel left out a lot of the time from decision making. And I think putting the decision making closer to the community that it impacts only benefits the community, because it allows people to have more information and to be more invested in the outcomes. And so I think that perhaps that would be something worth exploring.
Great. So you're talking about greater home rule then in a lot of different areas, and would you then and support legislation or enact some legislation that would be able to do this, and then rally then the other counties together to support that legislation? Is that something that you'd be passionate enough to do?
If that was, you know, if that was the will of our county residents, especially our, you know, teachers and the employees that work in that system, and as well as like parent boards, if that was a resounding support there, then I would be willing to move forward on the issue.
Great. Thank you. Next, we'll have Bruce. We'll ask the next question.
Aloha, Mahina. There was talk in the past, and I'm going to present this to you, about making Molokai a 5th county, making it its own home rule. Where do you stand on that, and how do you see that picture, and how would you see moving forward with such an idea?
I like that idea. You know, Uncle Walter Ritty has been an advocate for a Molokai County for as long as I can remember. I think, you know, an issue would be funding and our tax base. But who knows what the future holds? I support exploring that idea. I like it. I don't know what that means or like for a lot of things, but it's something that a lot of people in Molokai like the idea of.
Great. Something worth exploring.
Yep.
Other question is the issue of sustainable agriculture. There's a lot of talk about making truck farms and making local farmers, but very little action. You know, on Molokai, as on Maui, our major major corporations own and run and operate our prime farmland for their profit and not for the people to grow food. If you were in the state legislature, what would you do to promote sustainable and local agriculture?
I think, one way to promote it is through providing funding to small farmers. I love food hubs. I think food hubs are such a good thing that, helps farmers to market and distribute their products. So I think expanding food hubs and their reach could make a big difference. Also, connecting schools and restaurants and even hospitals to use local food products could all be good things that could help. The county did micro grants. I think that helped a lot of small farmers, and if the state could provide additional support in that way, then I think that would be a good thing.
Thank you. With that, I'll pass it to Anne.
So Mahina, I noticed that you said one of your priorities is water, water rights. And so what is your beliefs about water rights? I know that the state in the past has made multiple attempts to buy water like that's owned by EMI or Wailuku Water Company. I guess you have your own water company in Molokai, and there's one in Lanai, right? I'm not sure about Hana, but and they lease for these really long periods of time to these international corporations, right? And has resulted in stream diversions. What is your beliefs on water rights?
Well, I think that, for me as an environmentalist, as a cultural person, ensuring that the public trust resources and water in its natural state are upheld, and water is making it everywhere that it needs to go in our natural environment. I believe in diverting the least amount of water as possible. And when water is diverted, it needs to be done very carefully, very, very minimally, and we just need to be careful about how we divert water.
Who do you think is entitled to water rights?
I think the environment is entitled to water rights.
But I mean, do you mean state should own it, or should be maybe county or privately? Like you mentioned, the public trust,
mm-hmm.
Right?
I think it's a case by case basis. I think the state has a pretty good water code. It's just about enforcing the water code. We always have to fight for things that we think are like common sense, like water in the rivers. I think that the burden of proof should be put on the water user rather than the people trying to protect the water.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Great, we'll have Alan next.
All right, aloha. And I have another, well, this is kind of a multiple question. So I don't know if you're aware of the Lahaina Crossroads Apartments. They're in Lahaina. I know this is not your area, but this is an example. The owner there has basically asked all the tenants to vacate, and they want to double the rent after that. So because of this, and we know that rents are increasing, what's your thoughts about residential rent control? And then I'll ask you the second part in a little bit.
Okay. For residential rent control, I like the idea of rent control. It would just need to be something that's thought of very carefully to avoid unintended consequences of rent control. Sometimes having the opposite effect of actually taking units out of the market or causing deferred maintenance issues because landlords are less likely to do repairs. But I like the idea of rent control. I think it could help, and it's something that we need to consider, considering how crazy rent prices are right now.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is, what's considering for small businesses, rent is either the first highest cost, or the second highest cost after staffing. What do you think about the idea of commercial rent control?
I think that similar to my answer for the residential rent control, I think maybe putting a cap on how much a landlord is allowed to increase year by year, so that the small business owner or business people can anticipate what their increases will be, and they won't be hit or caught off guard, at the time of a lease renewal.
Great, thank you.
Mahina, I'll ask the next question, and it has to do then with our over-tourism that we have going on right now. We have a certain carrying capacity that our island, I think, can handle based on the infrastructure that we have. So I guess what I have is a two-part question. What can we do in terms of managing tourism, or having tourism limits or something along that line? Is there something that you feel you could do on a state level? And also, where the state has control is some areas of infrastructure, our roads, for example. What would you do then to also increase the, obviously, the great need that we have right now for more roads and infrastructure based on the present situation we have right now?
So ideas to address tourism. I think, the county is proposing a package of legislation to address tourism in the county, including tourism accommodation cap and the ban on camper vans. So I think those things in the county would help a lot. And, perhaps expanding similar ideas throughout the state. I think a cap, we need a carrying capacity for tourism. And, when we're at our limit, you got to come another time. I think that we need to set boundaries for tourism, and it's not just an all-you-can-eat buffet of Hawaii. You got to, there are rules. And if you're coming here to be a tourist, then you got to follow the rules. I think setting a road use tax for tourist cars, rental cars, could help with the infrastructure. Also encouraging more like shuttle services for tourists, so that we don't have all those cars congesting the roads. Yeah, and also an EIS for tourism in Hawaii. I support that.
So when I look at some of the legislation that was passed here that's affecting us, if you look at the size of the parking garage here in Maui, in Kahului, it's enormous, and certainly encouraging more cars on our road then. What would you do to help alleviate some of these things that have been passed and money pouring in to increase tourism? Is there specific bills that you would go after, or specific legislation?
I don't have specific legislation or bills that I would go after necessarily. Something that I think has been interesting to witness is the shift of, we have our tourism agencies like HTA who have traditionally been marketing tourism, marketing people to come to Hawaii. And now we're kind of seeing the shift of our people and our residents wanting them to manage tourism. So seeing how they're trying to shift to management, but not quite getting there is interesting. So I would like to focus on that management piece and building that out. I know that the Native Hawaiian Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement just got the contract to do tourism management and planning. So I'm excited to see, how they'll do things differently.
Great, thank you. Bruce, you'll be next.
Your predecessor, Lynn DeCoit, for that thing, had homestead land on Molokai, quite a big spread of it, when she chose to lease that land to for-profit GMO growing corporations and support GMO mass agriculture on Molokai, creating immense pollution to the A'apua'as. And this seems categorically wrong to me, that someone could take homestead land and sublease it to big corporations and along with the water rights. What's your feelings about that, and what do you see could be done to prevent that type of action in the future?
Yeah, that seems wrong to me too. Historically, the land has been leased to pineapple, sugar, GMOs. So I don't know specifically what I would do to prevent it, but I would like to look into, I would like to get rid of GMOs altogether. So I would like to look into how we can prepare our economy to be able to not have GMOs anymore being grown on Molokai.
Thank you. And a big issue, even more so on Oahu than Maui, but big on Maui now, is the homeless situation. And everyone's reaching for ideas on how to resolve and solve and improve and deal with. What would be your ideas and concepts and legislative ideas for taking care of the homeless situation in Hawaii?
We have so many amazing nonprofits that are doing great work to help the homeless situation. So one idea that I do have is to put support behind these nonprofits to do the work that they're doing and to advance the work that they're doing in our communities with our homeless population. I think, that could help a lot. Also, mental health is a big issue here too. And, trying to get more services and connect to our homeless population in that aspect as well is something that I would like to work on.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'll pass it to Anne.
So Mahina, you're representing areas that are very rural in nature, very spread out. So I think poses a real challenge. So I want to address land use and development. And I learned recently that the Molokai Ranch is for sale. And they said it's almost like as much land as one of the biggest land purchases in Hawaii, as like Larry Ellison in Lanai. And what do you see as lands that should be protected or maybe rezoned when you see these massive parcels of land being sold? And what do you see as the possibility of maybe rezoning or protecting or something of that nature?
Yeah, so I see that too. Molokai Ranch is 30% of our island. They have historically not been good stewards of the Āina. And what happens on that land, dictates the health of so much of our resources and our people. So I think, putting more funds into protecting open space could be a big thing. I know that, in Maui, I recently saw that Giggle Hill was being sold to a private developer. And, that's not where I'm from, but like, it made me sad. It's so beautiful, and it's so important to maintain our open space, not just to have open space, but for our culture. If we don't have that space to practice our cultural practices, then it deteriorates our culture. So I am a proponent for funding the protection of open space and for rezoning, downzoning important lands for agriculture and conservation.
So about how many acres do you know does that constitutes all that land that Molokai Ranch owns?
Yeah, roughly 50,000 acres.
Wow, that's a lot. So, a lot of the developments here are called ag zoned, right? They're ag lands, but there's no actual agricultural or farming activity. And we see more and more of those. I know that they have quite a few in Haiku. What are your beliefs on that? Do you think that needs to be considered, that there should be farming, or that should be land that's for food and or what? Farming?
Yeah, I do believe that if it's agriculture land, there should be agriculture happening, right? Agriculture land. We have that issue here as well, where we have $1 million homes on, 15 acres of agriculture land with 3 banana trees, and that's the agriculture, So yeah, it's a problem. And I acknowledge that.
Yeah. So this was addressed by the last mayor, and nothing has ever been done since our last mayor. So, okay, well, thank you for that.
Okay, and Alan will be our last question that we'll have.
All right, aloha. Since Maui residents pay one of the highest electric rates in the nation, and that electricity is provided by a private corporation, and Kauai pays some of the lowest rates in the nation based on electricity being provided by a community cooperative. What are your thoughts as an elected state representative of how you could support efforts to change our electric distribution system statewide from a private corporation to a publicly owned or operated cooperative?
I'm a big fan of electrical cooperatives. On Molokai, I was part of the founding, people who started the Ho'ahu Energy Cooperative, which is energy for the people, by the people, on our terms, where all of the benefits go back into our community. And so, yeah, that's been a couple of years now. And we recently, earlier this year, submitted for the CBRE project. And no, that's still pending, but we're doing all kinds of other things. We have solar technician trainings that they just graduated the first class out of that. And, we're doing work on microgrids and trying to get small, I don't want to call them sheds, but little microgrids into our homestead community where they don't currently have access to, the regular electric grid. So, yeah, I'm very supportive of the cooperative model for electricity. I think it'll bring a lot of equity to our communities. And on Molokai, we also have super high electric rates.
And just a follow-up question, the training program you mentioned for technicians, is that on Molokai?
Yeah, it was on Molokai. The idea is that as we're building out, our solar farms and installing these little systems, that we'll need the workforce to maintain the systems and install them. And right now, we have companies that fly in to do the work. So we're hoping to build our own workforce for that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mahalo.
Well, Mahina, we've covered a lot of ground in our interview, and what I'd like to do is just end with is there anything that you feel that you'd like the audience to know about you that we haven't covered, or any other last statements that you'd like to make?
No, just that, I mean, yes. I'm really proud and humbled to be running for this seat. I do feel like a fish out of water, honestly, but I more so feel like there needs to be more action behind the philosophies. We all agree that climate change is happening, but we need bolder action to get there, to be resilient and build our resilient communities for the future. And that's about it that I'd like to share right now. And just thank you all for your time.
Great. Thank you, Mahina. And for those of you who, again, we're looking at state representative for District 13. That includes Haiku, Hana, Molokai, and Lanai. And for those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, that you can also then get these interviews, all the interviews that we have on Maui Pono Network.org. And it'll also be on Akaku Channel 54. Mahalo for watching.